Hey guys, Cesar here. It's that time again as I go through my 4 comic picks of the week, so let's get started. Let's begin with Thor number 2. I mentioned on my review of the last issue that the biggest problem the first installment faced was not showing the protagonist until the very end. This second number solves that problem by telling the story almost entirely from the new Thor's point of view. And here's where I think Jason Aaron is playing a remarkably risky gamble. And although I have no doubt on his capacity as a writer, I think it's possible for his strategy to blow up on his face in terms of reader reaction. I'm part of the Attack on Titan fandom, and I know how mass speculation can turn a common board into a shark tank, and holding information from the reader can feel like cheating on their eyes. The bet that is taking place here is that Aaron still doesn't reveal the identity of the new Goddess of Thunder, and yet he's giving us the basic of her personality, constantly diving into her thoughts and what she's making of her decision of becoming Midgard's new guardian. I like the new Thor. She manages to keep a balance between a rookie facing her first big battle and a veteran who has plenty of experience with it. See it this way, imagine that you are at an MMO and you have been acquiring experience with one set of weapons that adjust to your playstyle. Then you're given a different weapon that's technically better than the last one, but it forces you to change your strategy in order to gain the upper hand. The new Thor is quick on her feet, yet she is struggling just enough to get a complete handle of her new status, which gives this issue a good sense of unpredictability. It's a great action-packed and gorgeously drawn issue that still manages to get close and personal with its central character, although there are some moments when the reading can get a little hard to digest due to abundance of Thor's speech bubbles, and I'm still a bit unsure if Jason Aaron's gamble will pay off reader-wise. But for now, this is a satisfying ride. This gets a 4 out of 5. Following up is All New Captain America number 1, or as I like to call it, All New Uncle Sam, because that was the first image that popped up to my head when I heard that dear old Falcon was becoming Cap. This first issue is probably one of the best jumping points for new readers that I have seen since the beginning of the current Ms. Marvel. To give you an example, Rick Remender manages to condense Sam's backstory and basic motivations in the space of 2 pages. His personality is instantly relatable, and I'm glad to report that this comic, much like the current Ms. Marvel, pretty much avoids the pitfall that usually come when writing ethnic minorities. Aside from being a journalist, I'm also a sociology minor, and if there was one thing that stuck with me during those 6 semesters, is that assigning personality traits based on a person's biology is essentially stupid. Race is applied as a social construct in this book. Sam's persona is based on his personal experiences and the place he grew up in, but also in personal struggles that people of any gender or demographic can identify with, never on the color of his skin. That color may determine on what other people think or expect of him, and that external element may also have an impact on how he sees himself and the world around him. But at his core, Sam Wilson is like any other guy who's struggling to leave his mark and fighting to make the world a better place. The plot is on the basic side though. As strong as the characterization is, the story itself is pretty essentially filtration into evil-based stuff that Marvel Comics seems to have grown fond of since the premiere of The Winter Soldier. It gives a space for establishing the differences between Sam and Steve's modus operandi though. The art on the other hand left me with one hell of a weird feeling. I like Stuart Imonen's line work as much as the next guy, but the color saturation can be uncomfortable. I would say that roughly 65% of this book is red, so when you have Sam's bright red wings against a solid red background, you start to wonder if the colorists lost their ink somewhere in the office, or working inside a furnace and this is their way of asking out for help. All in all, a solid first entry, and I really recommend this book to people who are trying to get into comics. Characterization is solid, and it manages to give Sam his own distinctive style as Captain America. Could be impressed with this title, even if the art is rubbing me a little in the wrong way. 4 out of 5. Next is Attack on Titan 63, and I don't know how many trigger warnings should I put into this thing. The title is known for its disturbing imagery, particularly dismemberment and over-the-top gore, and while this chapter contains one of the most brutal executions since the film of Titan arc, that doesn't compare to another moment halfway through the comic when Isayama decides to reference this. I know that this writer has been hammering the fact that humans are worse monsters than the Titans during this entire story arc, but I don't know if he had to resort to this level of effed up imagery. Although I consider this fits well considering all the times fecal matter has been referenced by name in this series. I guess it was just a matter of time before it was brought up literally. Aside from that, this chapter kinda fills out some of the details of the one reveal of the previous issue, yet it manages to hide enough of the specifics to make you feel like there's still more info to be uncovered as time goes on. Not to mention that it ends in one of the most urgent cliffhangers since the gunfight from a few months ago. Another thing that I like is the sense of uncertainty. There's a certain tone that puts the reader in instant suspicion mode. You're not entirely sure if all the info that is being given is trustworthy, as little as it is. Attack on Titan, while not info dump heavy, is probably one of the few works that manages to give them and keep you on your toes at the same time. Now for the thing I didn't like. There's a moment when Levi's squad is getting ready for the oncoming confrontation with Kenny, and a conversation between the squad leader and Mikasa ended in a possible reveal that made me shout bullshit out loud. I understand that there has to be more layers to the whole Ackerman business, but this made up with some characters turning into plot MacGuffins. I just don't buy it in the concept of the narrative. Attack on Titan constantly points out that self-acquired skill and willpower beat out raw force and impulse fear. So for it suddenly proposed that someone's skills are connected to a bloodline a la Naruto is irritating. It's a bit of a step down from the bombshell that was the last chapter, but it's still building up nicely to the final confrontation of the arc, and if the final page of this chapter is any indication, the fight is just around the corner. This gets a 3.5 out of 5. Finally, I recommend everyone to get your asset because we're about to get into a bizarre cosmic trip in Bucky Barnes' The Winter Soldier number 2. I didn't review the first issue because the idea of a book following the events of original sin turned me off, but then I started hearing really good things about it, and I have to agree. This is not only quality work, it isn't like anything I have read before. One negative aspect that I can point out to it is that it can be downright inaccessible. This is the type of book that invites you to read more than once, and it ends up becoming the type of work that allows you to discover something new with each visit. This issue in particular deals with Bucky's psyche as he deals with a drug-laced bullet that injured him last time. Ironic. As I said, this isn't exactly an easy read, but that doesn't make it less engrossing. There are not references to other events in other titles, and the focus is constant. Then there's the art, which is sometimes confusing panel-wise. One moment you're seeing a sequence of panels detailing an action scene, but at second glance you realize that the sequence is arranged over a big drawing that changes your perspective on what the previous images mean. It adds another layer of depth to the psychological element of the book. I'm glad that they decided to use the art as the main vehicle for the mental aspect. Hallucinations and dreams are not expressible through the boundaries of written or spoken language. These kind of scenarios are ambiguous by nature, and preset codes such as writing or speaking are the total opposite. They are arbitrary and don't leave enough room for speculation. Visual language, on the other hand, can be ambiguous, so it's the perfect choice to convey this type of heavy personal material. This is definitely on my personal must-read list. I love to encounter something different to the usual fare, and this is clearly on that category. There isn't a single lazy moment on it, and I love how much leaves to the reader to interpret on its own. That's the sign of a writer that trusts their audience intelligence, 4.5 out of 5. And that will be all for this week. This was admittedly one of the best weeks I had since I started with the 4-comic format, and the next one should be a treat because, if my calculations are right, it's going to be an all-female roundup next Wednesday. See you all soon.